Today, let's talk about INFJ rage and why we're so afraid of it. Rage as an INFJ is something that we really shy away from because there's so much power in it. It is probably the one emotion that took me the longest time to conquer. And when I'm talking about conquering, I'm not talking about keeping it under wraps. It's actually all about feeling it. It's all about expressing it in a healthy way. And most of us INFJs really suppress anger. We are not the kind of people as a collective and in general who tend to have, anger management issues that they share with the outside world. It's actually something that we keep hidden as much as possible. But it's not healthy, and it's actually one of those triggers that once we're able to address it, once we're able to conquer it, it really opens up an entire new world and universe in which we can operate in. And so I really want to talk to you about this because this is the one emotion, and I can say this with absolute certainty, that has caused me the biggest pain in my life. I have expressed it once fully, and it is an emotion I never want to feel to this extent again. But it opened all the floodgates. And now on the other side of it, I have found strategies that work for me, that work for INFJs in general, that really help to use this rage, this anger, not only as fuel that will catapult us to the next level of our evolution, of our personal growth, but it really allows us to have healthy and happy relationships. Before we get started, I have a great announcement. I have decided to offer one-on-one coaching again. I started a couple of months ago, only advertising it to the people in my newsletter, but I can now openly talk about it again. My girl's a little bit bigger now, so I do have the capacity to offer this. So if you're interested, you can find all the information in the link in the description. You can also find the link to the free posters as well as to the audio guide. So if you have any interest in taking your personal development further with the material that I offer and the coaching services that I offer, you can find everything you need to know in the links in the description. I watched a video recently by Tim Ferriss and Dr. Gabor Mate, and it was all about learning to cope with rage. But for them, it was going into the other extreme, which is I feel like I'm angry all the time and I let it out on the people around me. I know this is not healthy, but I don't know how to control it. We as INFJs in general go to the other extreme, which is suppressing anger. Of course, both ways of dealing with anger and dealing with rage aren't healthy, but most of the time it looks like if a person is feeling anger all the time, they're hurting inside and they're also putting it on other people. We as INFJs, on the other hand, are also addicted to rage and anger in some kind of way. But what we do is we put ourselves in the vicinity of people who express anger and we aim to co-regulate them. We aim to allow them to express their anger. We allow them the space to feel everything that they want to feel. And what we very often don't understand is that this in itself is not how it's supposed to be. This is not a healthy way of dealing with our own anger, with other people's angers. And it all has to do with, believe it or not, boundary setting. And this is something that you can watch in the other video that I mentioned before as well, because it all stems from things we have experienced in childhood. So it doesn't have to be that you experience something traumatic, but if people did not allow you to feel anger, to express anger in a healthy way, and expressing anger in a healthy way is actually setting a boundary. So it's about a person is crossing your boundary. The healthy way of expressing anger is to let that person know in an emotional way. That is a healthy way of expressing anger. That's how it's defined. There's absolutely nothing wrong with anger in itself. It's a very important emotion, and I believe in like those Pixar movies, you can see this as well. I haven't even watched the new one. I have to do this. I loved the first one. Is it called Emotions? I'm not even sure. But, anger is not something bad. Anger is a very important emotion, and it's something that we have to integrate into ourselves. But as a defense mechanism, as a survival mechanism, we have learned to suppress anger. And this goes for people who as adults express anger outwardly, but also for people like us INFJs who suppress anger all the way. Because then when you are an adult and you're sort of in any kind of situation where you're supposed to set a boundary, you do not know how to react in that way. So you allow people to cross your boundaries and you either feel a lot of anger but don't do anything about it and it just boils over, or you don't even tap into your anger to begin with. If you're somebody who, like me, never felt angry, I remember this to this day that people asked me, I said, I don't even know what anger is. I have no capacity of anger. I don't get angry at anything. And you see people like this, sometimes in media where okay, that person is supposed to be angry. And there's always some spiritual understanding about the situation. There is some kind of justification for another person's behavior. And so we don't get angry. And this is good from a perspective of understanding a situation, but it doesn't really help us to work through that emotion. So we as INFJs have to understand that the end goal is that we do feel anger when somebody crosses our boundaries, and we not only feel it, but we express it. If we don't do that, people will keep on pushing your boundaries, and we will react in the following way. We'll either get passive aggressive, we continue to walk on eggshells and actually bring out even more anger in the other person, and most likely it will lead to some kind of door slamming situation where we just can't hold it in anymore, and then this huge rage comes out one way or another, and sometimes we just can't control ourselves anymore, and then it comes out. For me, that was the moment when everything changed. I was so afraid of letting that rage out because of numerous reasons. First off, I thought this was such an unlovable trait. There's no way somebody could really accept me, love me, tolerate me if they would see that kind of anger and hatred and rage that I was carrying within myself. And I was really trying to find a way to not tap into this. Of course, it didn't happen on a conscious level, but it did happen nonetheless. And at some point, I had to start protecting myself. I just didn't have another choice. And so what happened was I let it all out, and I thought it would destroy the other person. I was super ashamed of it, but I didn't have another choice. And so I told myself in that moment, I never ever want to feel like this again. This was such a bad experience. It hurt me so much. I was so concerned with how much that would hurt the other person as well. And I just wanted to avoid this at all cost. And what I've learned is that the only way to avoid this at all cost is to actually live it out in a healthy way. When you set boundaries where your boundaries are actually at, you can stay peaceful inside. But in order to get to that place, we first have to work through the rage and the anger that we carry within ourselves, because our boundaries have been crossed in the past. We did stay silent. We did use our introverted thinking in trying to justify that behavior. For example, that other person is suffering, I allow them to express themselves. This has nothing to do with me. I can take it. Like, that's what I'm good at. That's what makes me a good friend, because I can stay in all of their emotion and, be the peaceful center. But the truth is, it does affect us. Even if people are angry towards another situation or another person, if they're doing this around us, it will have an effect on us. And there's so many other things that we allow because of other people's pain, because of other people's perception of life. And we prioritize this over our own perception of life. And the only reason for this is that if we would really allow ourselves to tap into our own emotions, we have to tap into all our emotions. And that includes that rage and that anger that we have been suppressing for so long. And so one of the things that Dr. Gabor Mate mentioned in this video is you have to actually feel the rage. You have to feel and go through the emotion, feel it in your body. So, a great thing that worked for me at that time was listening to music that allowed me to feel those emotions. So I was listening to a lot of Eminem. I was listening to a lot of, music that was really hard, that was all about fighting and was all about survival mode. And it was really, based towards somebody. And for the longest time, I was so afraid of those emotions and I was ashamed of them because they weren't spiritual. They weren't, altruistic. I never wanted to be that person that feels anger because that would make me one of them. And I just felt I was too strong for that. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because I know why I'm feeling angry. I know why they're feeling angry. And so this has a lot to do with us going into our NITI loop, meaning we go and try to understand the situation instead of expressing how we really feel in that moment. And so if we don't want to express something that we've built up forever, of course, it's best to express ourselves in small ways continuously. And I will get to that in a minute. But before that, we have to really tap into our emotions and into our anger. So really look at all of those situations where you do have understanding for other people, where you don't want to go to those primal emotions of you did me wrong, you crossed my boundary, and you did bad, and it's all your fault, not mine. Like that's what we would like to feel, but our mind tells us so often, no, but it's not that easy. They have a reason for acting this way and so on. But those things can coexist. You can allow yourself to feel all your emotions, and that includes anger. So I really encourage all of you who have any kind of unhealthy relationship with anger, how I used to have it, to really tap into it and feel it. Feel it in your body. Feel where those emotions are coming up. Are they coming out in your chest? Are they coming out in your stomach, in your throat? And really lean into the music, think it, experience it as much as you possibly can. And if you visualize another person, then do that. It's okay. It's a necessary tool to actually work through it. Because after that, you actually understand that anger is a healthy way of self-protection. And so if you never wanted to get that far, that you have like this rage outburst, really lean into feeling anger as soon as you possibly can. It is not a bad emotion. And I even have to tell myself this over and over again because I do have to stand up for my boundaries. I do have to tell people when they've overstepped mine. And the thing that we're ashamed of so often is the way we would need to set boundaries would show the world who we really are. Because setting boundaries is actually the thing that makes people see us. How can people see us if they don't know, okay, that's where their boundary lays? This is who you are in comparison to me. And so people so often don't see us. We feel like people misunderstand us, but they have no way of seeing us, understanding us, protecting our boundaries if we don't show them where they're at. And when you first start setting boundaries, and I really mean use anger as a tool for this, that does not mean that you're going to go out and, yell at a person who just calls you one more time, although you told them not to call you. It doesn't have to be that extreme. But for most of us, even the fact of setting boundary feels like an aggressive act of telling a person, please, I need my space. You stay over there. I'm going to stay over here. Hurting another person in this way, rejecting them in such a way that already is a part of anger. That is already a negative emotion that we let out, but it's a necessary emotion. And so the sooner you set those boundaries, the sooner you make a person feel a negative emotion when they've overstepped a boundary of yours, the more likely you're going to create a harmonious relationship with that person. Because you're saying to them, this is who I am. Now you can decide, do you want to accept that or not? And people will not understand it at first because we are unique. We are a small percentage of the population, meaning if a person has never met an INFJ or has seen a boundary of an INFJ, they will not understand it. But people don't need to understand it at first. All they need to know is I need to take a step back and try to understand what's going on, or try to really, find a way to understand that person and have a connection with that person if I want to. And so I know it's a scary process, but it really is the one thing that's going to help you to get a positive grasp on anger. It is there to set a healthy boundary. It is not something to run away from. And the sooner you use it in small doses, when you feel like somebody's overstepping your boundaries, the less of it you have to feel, the less passive aggressive you're going to be, and the less often you're going to come into situations where you have to act in a way that makes you really uncomfortable. And what is also a great side effect is that you see people who tend to outwardly express their anger, they actually calm down because of it. Believe it or not. We think at first, if there's a person who's constantly aggressive, if we set a boundary with them, they're going to explode. But they might explode in the moment. But if they learn that you're not going to be there for this, you're not going to accept this, and this is really not about explaining it to other people. I see this with INFJs all the time. I used to be like this, trying to explain to another person, these are my boundaries, please respect them. People have to feel it. It just doesn't work the other way. The typical example you've probably heard me say hundreds of times is you can tell a kid, don't touch the stove. They are going to learn it once they actually burn their finger a little bit. It doesn't have to be a blister. They just have to feel it. There has to be something in their body that tells them, this is not something I want to feel. And through that, they actually experience you as a person. Being around you means that you have to let people know that they have crossed a boundary. There's no way of people knowing that. And when people are then forced to actually work through their own anger, when before you were there and you were able to co-regulate them or to process that anger for them, and now you're not going to be there for that, they're way more likely to be confronted with that anger, having to sit with it and actually tap into the sadness that is below it, feel it, heal it, and then move through it. So don't shy away from anger. Find ways to express it in a healthy way. And as a first step, tap into that music. Allow yourself to feel as angry as you possibly can in order to open that valve, in order to tap into the sad emotions below, to feel them, to feel the anger and the sadness below it, and to heal through that. Because once you have access to all your emotions, you're also going to have access to a lot more joy, to a lot more motivation. You can use anger as a fuel, as something that pushes you, and not as something negative that you need to suppress, because otherwise you would feel like a bad person. Remember, if you want some help with this or other topics that you've seen in my videos or anything that you think I could be able to help you with, then work with me one-on-one. You can check out all the information through the link in the description. You can also get the free poster as well as the audio guide. So there's something for everybody who wants to take this further. Everything you need to know you can find in the links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in alignment with today's topic, then check out the video you see on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.